This is the McLaren Speedtail, and it is my favorite hypercar in existence. That's saying a lot because there are a lot of hypercars these days, and I've been lucky enough to drive most of them, but this is the one I'm most excited about. Over 1,000 horsepower, over $3 million, and only around 100 of these in existence for the entire world. And it is full of absolutely crazy quirks and features. And today, I'm going to review the Speedtail and show you everything. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website. We've had some amazing sales recently, including this Hennessy-tuned Mercedes E63 AMG, which sold for $36,500. This beautiful F10 BMW M5 in this like frozen silver color that sold for $42,500. And this Dodge Challenger Hellcat widebody, which sold for $63,000. If you're looking to sell your cool car from the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the best place to do it. You will get the most interest, the most views, and the most bids on your car, and we'll get it listed quickly. If you're looking to buy a cool car, check out our amazing selection and daily auctions at carsandbids.com. I've borrowed this Speedtail from the Triple F collection, which is an amazing car collection here in Ohio that has some truly unbelievable cars. Speedtail, Koenigsegg, Pagani, Ferrari F40, Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing, they've got it all. You can follow the Triple F collection on Instagram, and it's actually one of my very favorite follows because they really use the cars. They do stuff with them, unlike some accounts that just sort of take pictures of their hypercars under covers in hushed garages. Anyway, click the link below to check out the Triple F collection on Instagram. It's definitely worth it. So let's talk Speedtail. This is the latest in a series of Ultimate McLarens, the fourth one after three very famous cars, the P1, the Senna, and of course the F1 back in the 1990s. Aside from the F1, this is probably the most special for several reasons. For one, they're only making a little over 100 Speedtails for the entire world, but also this car has 3 seats. Yes, 3 seats, which I will show you. It also has over 1,000 horsepower, and it'll do 250 miles per hour, making this the fastest McLaren ever. This car is also not available in the United States. It's not being officially sold here, although here I am in the United States reviewing this one. It's been imported here under the show or display law, which is a special law for very special vehicles that allows them to be imported even if they don't meet our regulations for show or display purposes. In fact, McLaren says that even though the Speedtail is not officially sold here, around 1/3 of all Speedtail models will be sold in the United States under the show or display law. And today I'm going to review this one. First, I'm going to take you on a tour of the Speedtail and show you all of the quirks and features of my favorite modern hypercar. There are many quirks and features, so get ready. Then I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it. I can't wait. And then I'll give it a Doug score. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the Speedtail by discussing its quirkiest quirks, and that means starting with the fact that it has no exterior mirrors. Now, everybody who has ever designed a special supercar will tell you they would love to ditch the mirrors because it makes the car more slippery, better aerodynamics, and thus faster, but if you remove the mirrors, how exactly do you see behind you? Well, on the Speedtail, you press the unlock button to get into the car, and then these little pop-outs come out from the door. They just like open up. When the car is locked, they're closed, but when you unlock it, they open, and when you look inside, you can see little cameras in there. Inside this little pop-out, there's just a tiny little camera, like a backup camera, but on the side, and those are your mirrors. When you're driving the car, you have little screens on either side of the dashboard. You look to the right, and you can see what's to your right side behind you, like your right mirror. You look to the left, and you can see the same thing over on the left. And when you're driving along and you want to check what's behind you, you look left or right, and instead of looking in mirrors, you're looking at screens that are basically where the mirrors would be, showing you what the mirrors would see. But by eliminating the mirrors, they improved this car's aerodynamics. Now, the decision to use cameras instead of mirrors is one reason why the Speedtail can't officially be sold by McLaren in the United States, because US regulations say you gotta have mirrors. The US government hasn't quite caught on to the idea of mirror cameras just yet. And next up, McLaren's decision to ditch the mirrors for screens is a pretty interesting one, but inside there are even more quirky decisions. Like, for instance, they ditched the sun visors. This car has no sun visors. You can see at the top of the windshield, no way to shield yourself from the sun, except there is a way. The top of the windshield has an electrochromatic glass panel that you can dim or brighten whenever you want using this screen on the dashboard. You see here, you press it to dim and then it darkens, and that's your sun visor. Or if you want the full windshield, you can press and make it less dim again. Now it's brighter and you have your full windshield back, and your sun visor is a piece of glass that can darken or brighten at your convenience whenever you want. And this car has several pieces of electrochromatic glass. As you can see on this screen, you can dim or brighten various glass panels on top of this car. You press this and it dims or brightens the glass panels on the top of the doors, so you can have them bright or dark depending on what you want. You press this and it dims or brightens the ones behind you, so you can have those brighter or darker depending on what you want, depending on how much light you want to come through the interior. And you press this little one and it even dims or brightens this tiny little window right above you, so you can have that darker or lighter, again depending on how much light you want to come in here. And of course the reason for this is, this way if you're in the hot sun driving this car and you don't want so much sun to be beating down on you, you just tap all these things and you can have your entire roof dark basically, and the sun won't get in. You can see there's even a control in this screen that allows you to darken everything at once or to lighten everything at once, so you don't have to go through and press them all individually. That's pretty quirky. But nothing in this car is quite as quirky as the seating position, because this car has 3 seats. Just like its predecessor from years ago, the McLaren F1, and also just like the Matra Marina. Although the Marina had the 3 seats and the steering wheel over on the left, this car has it in the center. The driver sits in the middle of this interior, just like in the McLaren F1. So you have the driver flanked on either side by seats. 1 seat in the middle and 2 on either side. Just a crazy way to do it. And that means you're driving this car not sitting on the left side or the right side. You're sitting directly in the middle of the cockpit, which is pretty crazy. Now, a couple of interesting things about the 3-person seating position. McLaren says the leather on the seats was specially designed to make it easier to slide across it when you're the driver getting into the car, but also the leather is specially designed to keep you in place when you're sitting in the seat. I'm not quite sure how it can be both, but that's what McLaren says. It's also worth noting the seats are pretty tight. As you can see, the back seats or the side seats are not very big at all. Adults will have trouble getting into them, but if you can fit for short trips, whatever, it gives you the opportunity to take 1 extra person compared to every other exotic car, 50% more seating capacity in the Speedtail. And by the way, the 3-person seating layout is another reason why this car cannot be officially sold new by McLaren in the United States. US regulations say that each front occupant needs to have access to an airbag if you get into an accident. Technically, these are 3 front seats, and so McLaren would have to figure out some way to get an airbag to these side seats. It just wouldn't really work. And so that's another reason this car doesn't work with US regulations and why it has to come over using the show or display law. And next up, moving outside the Speedtail for some more interesting quirks and features, I want to talk aerodynamics for a second. Aero is a tremendously important thing to this car. Obviously, you can tell that because they ditched the mirrors, but if they wanted to make it go 250 miles an hour, aero had to play a really big part, and it does. The styling is a clear way you can tell that. It's called the Speedtail because the tail of this car is sort of drawn out in this aerodynamic fashion to make it as slippery and as aerodynamic as possible. But to me, the craziest decision done for Aero, aside from maybe the mirrors, is up on the front wheel right here. You can see there's like a cover over the front wheel. This is carbon fiber, and it is for Aero. It is intended to allow wind to travel over the front wheel so it doesn't get caught up in the spokes, which would maybe slow the car down. And you can see while the car is moving, this cover stays in place, always mounted in this spot to help guide the air over the wheel and make this car a little bit more slippery so that it can reach 250 miles per hour. And next up we move on to the doors, which of course open upward as you would expect from a special exotic car, but the way you open them is kind of peculiar. There's no traditional door handle as you might expect. They've done something weird, and that weird thing is you stick your hand into this air intake here, you can see, and then you feel two buttons. One button sort of curves downward, the other one curves kind of upward. You press the one that curves downward, and then the door opens up automatically. As you can see, it rises up electronically, and that's how you get into the car. Now, when you want to close the door again, of course, on the outside, you just walk up to the same buttons, press the one that curves upward, and then the door closes itself automatically. The reason the doors are electronic, I suspect, is you can't really do door handles in a car with 3 seats. You'd be reaching across to try to reach the door handles. It's easier to make them electronic. Now, the especially cool thing with the doors on this car is you can also open them up using the key. Press the unlock button on the key fob, and then the doors rise up. Both of them simultaneously rise up when you press unlock, and then you simply wait for your doors to open, and then you can climb into your Speedtail. If you want the doors to go back down, just press the lock button on the key fob. Press lock, and you can see the doors just go back down automatically, so you don't have to press these little buttons. You could do it all from the key fob, open or close the doors. That's pretty cool. And next up, since I'm talking Speedtail exterior, let's go over some other interesting things out here. For one, this car has 2 trunks, 2 cargo areas. You open them by pressing on the key fob the corresponding part of the Speedtail that you want to open. You can see a little Speedtail diagram and the trunk in the front and the trunk in the back, and that is just cool. But anyway, you press the back of that little Speedtail and it pops open the rear trunk. You open it up and discover it's actually surprisingly large. There's a lot of space back here in the rear trunk, a lot more than I would expect for a purpose-built hypercar not intended to be practical. Well, it's actually pretty practical. But of course, there's also a front trunk in this car, and if you press the little front icon on the Speedtail on the key fob, it will pop open the front trunk, and then you can open it up and see that you have more cargo space in here, although not that much. The rear cargo area is a lot bigger than the front cargo area, although there is some cargo space in here. But to me, there are 2 far more interesting things in this front cargo area. One, you press this little button here. It's like a little snap that holds this panel in place. You pull the panel off and you can see this is where your fire extinguisher is, and you also have a little zippered pouch in here that I assume is for tire changes, like a can of Fix-A-Flat or whatever. A more interesting panel in this front trunk, though, is right here. This carbon fiber panel with this tab at the end. You pull up the tab and there are your tools. Your McLaren Speedtail solid gold tools, intended to be gold to mimic the original gold tools in the McLaren F1, which were gold to save just a little bit of weight, according to the designer Gordon Murray. Now, these tools are unbelievably cool. Not only do they say Speedtail on all of them, leaving no question that they are purpose-made for this car, but they also have the chassis number of this particular car, in this case XP3, so you know exactly which Speedtail your tool comes from, just in case you have multiple and you're trying to remember where to put your tool back in. Now, XP3 is the chassis number of this car. I will explain that later in the video, why this car doesn't have a serial number like 27 or 54, and why it's called XP3. I'll cover that soon. And by the way, speaking of XP3, worth noting the key to this car is color matched. The key fob matches the exterior color, very beautiful, and if you turn over the key fob, it also says XP3, leaving no question as to which Speedtail your key operates. But anyway, next up, since I'm still outside this car, a few more interesting quirks and features out here. I want to talk lighting, especially in back where it's kind of interesting. You can see the lights in back are these thin little strips of light. When you put on the turn signal, it has a sweeping turn signal on this strip on the outer half that sort of sweeps out to whichever side you're turning, and I really like that. That, of course, looks very cool. Now you put on the brake lights, and the brake light is the other half of this little light strip, so you have half sweeping turn signal, half brake light, all on this very thin little rear lighting strip, which looks cool. The third brake light, though, is maybe the most interesting thing. You have this strip of light coming down in the center of the car in the back. The third brake light is a part of this strip. You can see it turn on here. That is a very distinctive third brake light look in the Speedtail. You don't really see that on basically any other car. Pretty cool. And next up, since I'm talking lighting, another interesting quirk of the Speedtail, European regulations say that all cars have to have turn signals in the front, in the back, and on the sides. And that's why you see a lot of cars with turn signals in the mirrors, because that's a logical place to put a side turn signal, except this car doesn't have mirrors on the side. So where do they put that side turn signal? It's in the front wheel well. You can see it here. This little turn signal is in the wheel well to satisfy that regulation, not mounted on the mirror like most cars, because, well, there are no mirrors to mount it on. The wheel well works instead. And next up, a few other interesting exterior items, still focused around back. You look back here and you can see like little lines cut into the bodywork in the back, which seems kind of strange. That's the spoiler in this car. It's an active spoiler in back, and it actually curves upwards when it's ready to, and it curves the body. You can see it's not a distinct spoiler from the body. It actually curves the bodywork up, and that is the spoiler in this car. You will never see that again. A spoiler that actually flexes the body of the car. What an insane piece, another crazy detail quirk of the Speedtail. Now, part of the reason it can do that is because this particular Speedtail is fitted with 1K carbon fiber throughout the entire car. This is a special new type of carbon fiber you can get as an option. It is very expensive, around $600,000 in optional carbon fiber beyond what would be standard in this car alone. 600 grand in optional carbon fiber. You can also see back here, you have Speedtail written out in the back. That's not in regular plastic like most car badges. It's not even in gold. It's in platinum. Platinum badging on the outside of this car for Speedtail and for the McLaren logo in back, also platinum, and same deal, McLaren logo in front. The platinum badging for this car is an $84,000 option. Unbelievable. In fact, this car, all added up, has over $1 million just in optional equipment, which takes the sticker price of this one to around $4 million, making it maybe the most expensive Speedtail in existence with all of its impressive and crazy optional features. And next up, we move back inside the Speedtail, and one interesting quirk is if you're getting in this car to drive it, you can get in on whichever side you want, left or right, it doesn't really matter. That wasn't true of the McLaren F1, which had a gear lever over on the right side of the driver's seat, and so you pretty much had to get in on the left side. But this car, no gear lever, it's not a manual transmission, of course. You can get in on whichever side you want. In fact, if you want, you can climb all the way through this interior, as you can see I'm doing now. Get in on the left, get out on the right, doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you want to do. It's mostly symmetrical in here, although it is worth noting that the driver's seatbelt comes from the right, like where it would come in a traditional left-hand drive car. So that's one interesting piece of asymmetry, the seatbelt positioning. Now, if you're trying to climb out of this car, of course, it isn't really easy. You gotta slide over a seat and it's low to the ground and it's kind of a challenge to climb out. It is worth noting there is a hidden handle you can use to help lift yourself out. It's in the windshield frame, it's right here. You can stick your hand in this for support when you're trying to climb out of the car, and that's nice to have. It really is kind of helpful getting out, because otherwise it is pretty difficult to climb out of a Speedtail. Now, when you're in this car, of course, there's no door panel access. You're sitting in the driver's seat, it's hard to reach the door door panel, so they didn't give you storage on the door panel. You also have no glove box because the dashboard is split in half by the steering wheel. It doesn't really make sense to stick a glove box on either side. However, you do have some storage in here, and it's under the passenger seat. So you can see this little clip comes off. It's a magnet, and then there's storage under here, and surprisingly large storage. In fact, there's decent room here in case you want to put stuff in your interior and your 2 passenger seats are occupied. And it's worth noting you have this storage on both sides. Both passenger seats have this little storage cubby underneath, so you can put your stuff in there, and that is pretty cool. And by the way, speaking of storage, you have one other rather quirky storage compartment in here, a little slot for the key. At the very front center of the driver's seat, this little pouch is where you can stick the key while you're driving the car, and then you don't have to like carry it in your pocket or whatever. You just stick it right between your legs in this tiny storage pouch in front, which is kind of charming. But anyway, once you're inside the car, you want to put the door down. They're power operated, and so you do it by pressing this little switch on the ceiling. You press it down, and then the door comes down and closes automatically. And of course, you have one of those switches on both sides. You press the switch, and the door comes down and closes. No levers, no manually pulling the door closed in this car. It's all power operated, very luxurious, actually. And of course, if you want to open the door, you just press that switch the other way. Push the switch up, and the door opens up, and then you can just climb out using your little handle and trying the best you can to look graceful. Pretty easy door operation in this car. And by the way, speaking of the door operation, there's also a little switch next to the one for the doors that controls the power windows. You press that, the window goes down, and of course press it the other way and the window goes back up. Although it's worth noting the windows in this car are very, very small. You don't get a lot of window area to have it go up or down. Just this tiny little opening in the larger window, that's your whole power window. And next up, still talking about the doors, another interesting quirk in this car is the climate vents. You can see there's a climate vent on each door, and then also climate vents near there on the dashboard. So you have 2 climate vents on each side, one on the door, one on the dashboard. So 4 total climate vents in here. And obviously that way the passengers and the driver can all have access to a cornucopia of climate vents. One thing you don't have in here though is a rear view mirror. I already showed you the mirror cameras on the sides of the dashboard, but you do not have a central rear view mirror. This is a bit of a drawback of a center seat car, because if you did have a mirror, you'd be looking right at your face. Now the McLaren F1 had little mirrors on each side of the center seat, but this car doesn't. They think that the little mirror cameras will be sufficient for seeing behind you, although you can't see directly behind you. Of course, you do have a backup camera in this car, so if you're backing up, you can see right behind you, but in normal driving, no center rear view mirror. Kind of interesting. But anyway, speaking of those mirror screens, one thing about this car is everything in here is screen based. Obviously, your rear view mirrors are no longer mirrors, they are now screens, but you also have 2 screens on the dashboard, left and right, which allow you to control pretty much everything in this car. Now the screen over on the left adjusts most of your comfort and convenience features. The one on the right is more like media, navigation, that sort of thing. I'm going to start over on the left where you can control the electrochromatic glass, as I have already showed you, but you can also use that screen to control, for instance, your climate controls in this car. Turn on the air conditioning, the heat, whatever, your typical climate controls. You can also position the air using this little race car looking guy, just like in other McLaren models, which is always a cool, charming little quirk. I love to see that in the McLarens. And you use this little dial next to the screen in order to increase or decrease your temperature. Your climate control temperature is controlled by that little dial, which is fairly easy, simple to use, and pretty intuitive. Nothing particularly strange there. Now over on the other side, symmetrically, you also have a screen the exact same size and another little dial, also the exact same size. This time the dial adjusts your radio volume. So just like in any other car with a radio dial, you can use it to turn the volume up or down. Pretty simple. Now, like I said earlier, this screen over on the right controls most of your media stuff, like your radio, your phone with Bluetooth is controlled through here, and also your navigation system, although I don't see a navigation option with this screen, probably because this car was never intended to be sold in North America, so it doesn't come with North American navigation. Now, your radio control in this screen is kind of interesting. You can choose between 3 different sound modes. One is focused towards just the driver. If you want the best sound experience just for the driver's seat, you can also change it to all 3 seats or like a whole car listening experience. You can choose between those different modes. Kind of strange to see 3 different sound modes in a car with such a tiny interior cockpit. Does it really change all that much? Well, McLaren and Bowers & Wilkins, the maker of the sound system, I guess they think that it does. Now also over in this screen on the right, you have a settings menu, but there's really nothing particularly interesting or weird or quirky in here, just your usual car settings that you'd see in a lot of other cars and a lot of other supercars. Now, one more screen in this interior, there are a lot, but the other one is probably the most common. That would be the center screen right in the middle for the gauge cluster, and it tells you all of the typical information you would want to know as the driver for this car. Your speed, tachometer, tire pressures, temperature, time, all that sort of stuff is in your center gauge screen. Now, unfortunately, you can't like swivel this. Like in the McLaren 720S, when it turns and adjusts and goes up or down, and it looks really cool doing it. Not so in the Speedtail. It is fixed in place, just being a screen. That is one cool piece of technology this car doesn't get. Now, even though most things in this car are controlled with screens, there are still a few physical buttons in here. To the left of the steering wheel and sort of at the bottom of the dashboard, you have buttons to open the front trunk and the rear trunk, and also the power locks button and a button to control the headlights and also your parking brake. So there are some buttons down there, some actual physical ones, not on a screen. Over to the right of the steering wheel below the dashboard, you have your hazard light button and your parking sensors, and you can also use this to toggle it in or out of tow mode. By the way, also in this vicinity under the dashboard near these buttons, I mentioned earlier there's no glove box in this car, and that's true, but there are little storage panels down here. You can press on this little piece of leather and it pops open and reveals a little bit of storage, plus some little ports where you can charge your phone or connect it to the car. Same deal over on the other side, press it and you have a little storage panel. Not strictly a glove box, not really all that big, but they're there for just a little bit more storage in this interior. You have your engine start stop button on the ceiling. You get into the car, you don't press like to the right of the steering wheel where you normally turn the key. Instead, you press up on your ceiling, which is an odd placement, but that starts up the car. You can also see up here your gears, reverse, neutral, and drive are mounted on the ceiling, which is also such a bizarre thing. It's so strange driving this car, you're moving it around, you want to put it in reverse, you don't like go next to you, instead you're pressing up on the ceiling to get the car in reverse. Then you want to go back into drive again, up on the ceiling. It's an odd placement, but that's where they did it. Now you also have your drive modes here. These little dials will adjust your drive mode. The one on the left will change your powertrain, and there are 2 options, C and S for comfort or sport. And the one on the right will adjust your handling. I guess it changes the suspension, the steering, and again, 2 options, comfort or sport. You can cycle through the 2, although you have to press active before you start adjusting the drive mode. It's kind of strange. You can't just change it. You have to first press active to confirm you will want to change it, and then you can adjust the drive mode. I guess so McLaren makes sure that nobody accidentally changes the drive mode if they don't want to. It's like a 2-step process, kind of odd. Also, one other interesting button up here, this blue button marked velocity. You press that and it puts the car into velocity mode, which lowers it by 1.4 inches, and it retracts the little mirrors on the doors. So you won't have mirrors anymore in velocity mode, but it's intended to make the car as aerodynamic as possible. Lower, no mirrors. Now it's as slippery as it can be, and that's the mode you'll want to be in if you want to go 250 miles an hour. This car's top speed, 250, best achieved in velocity mode. And let's talk about that 250 miles an hour, because that figure makes this the fastest McLaren ever made. Pretty impressive feat considering the F1 was the fastest car in the world for years. Well, this is faster, and actually by like 15 miles an hour. It's pretty cool. Now, one other cool thing, McLaren says the 250 is an electronically limited top speed. It can actually go faster, but doing more than 250 miles an hour, you'd have to go into some special mode and change the tires like in Bugatti, and McLaren didn't want you to have to do that. They wanted you to just be able to go 250 if you wanted to go 250. Now, in a Bugatti Chiron, in its normal mode, you can only go 236 miles an hour. You have to come to a stop, put in the special top speed key, confirm you really want to go that speed, make sure your tires are up to snuff, and then you can go the full 200 and whatever. In this car, you can put your foot down and just go all the way up to 250 with no special stuff needed, except for velocity mode. Now, the reason this car can go 250 miles an hour is in part due to its amazing aerodynamics, but it's also partially due to what's back here, the engine. I cannot open up the engine compartment, only a McLaren authorized service center can, but I can tell you about it. It's a 4-liter twin turbocharged V8, same engine from the McLaren 720S, although in this car it makes more power, specifically 746 horsepower plus 590 pound-feet of torque. Same engine from the 720S, but in the Speedtail it makes about 36 more horsepower and a little over 20 pound-feet of torque more than the 720S. So this car is faster at the baseline, but then there's an electric motor added on as well. Add up the electric motor's output and you get to a total of 1,055 horsepower and around 850 pound-feet of torque. Unbelievable numbers, the result being 0 to 60 in like 2.8 seconds on its way to that 250 mile per hour top speed. Now, one other thing I want to cover, like I said before, this is car number XP3. That stands for Experimental Prototype number 3. I told you they're making about 100 units of the Speedtail. The correct number is 106, the same number of McLaren F1s that they built. But there's also a few prototype cars that McLaren then converted back into regular road cars that they then sold to some customers, and this is one of those. In fact, the third one. So this was an experimental prototype development car McLaren was using to develop the Speedtail, and now it's a regular civilian model that looks and drives and acts just like all the other Speedtails, but it started its life as a development car, and I think that is pretty cool. Now, next up, one other amazing quirk of the Speedtail is how it charges. This is a plug-in hybrid, gasoline engine, but also an electric motor that you can charge, plug in, except you don't actually plug it in. To charge the electric motor in this car, you drive the car over a charging pad and that charges it. Just like you put your phone on an inductive charging pad, well, in this case, you drive your car over a charging pad and that charges the motor. You drive over the charging pad and you have to get it perfectly positioned on the charging pad before it can start charging, and there's a little app that'll tell you exactly where you need to move, left, right, forward, backward, whatever, so you can make sure that your car actually charges the electric motor with this charging pad. But once it's in place, it will charge, no need to plug it in, and that is amazing. Tremendously, tremendously cool. Although the owners of this car told me it's actually kind of a double-edged sword. It is very cool to have that, but it also means you can't plug it in anywhere. There's nowhere to plug it in. That's how you charge it. And so if you're going to take it somewhere and you need to charge it up, you have to also take the charging pad with it. Of course, that doesn't fit in the car, and so you won't be able to charge it unless you have the pad, as opposed to just plugging a car in like every other electric car. Still, amazingly cool inductive charging pad to charge an electric motor. This car is the future in so many ways. And so those are the quirks and features of the McLaren Speedtail. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how it drives. I am so excited. All right, driving the Speedtail. And this is unbelievable. I am incredibly excited for this. This car is my very favorite modern hypercar because I consider it the quirkiest. Like, I like weird cars. And a lot of people who like weird cars don't love like hypercars. Oh, they're too expensive, whatever. But this is a weird car. It is both a weird car and a hypercar. So many interesting quirks. So driving it, obviously the first thing you notice is the seating position is a little bit unusual. You're sitting in the middle of the car. Now, the Triple F guys told me, and I am experiencing firsthand, your instinct is to kind of move yourself over in the car to like the left part of the lane, because that's where you're used to driving here in the States. And I'm sure you'd feel, if you were driving the UK or Australia, whatever, you'd move to the right part of the lane. But you're in the middle of the car. So you have to kind of keep that in mind as you're driving this. I'm sure you'd get used to it, but you have to keep in mind, like, you're in the middle, so you have to stay in the middle of the lane, which is a little bit of a mind thing. It's like, whoa, okay, interesting. Real quick, just driving the car sort of at lower speeds, I'm actually surprised by how relatively accessible and stable it feels. It doesn't seem like some insane, crazy thing yet. It actually feels reasonably comfortable. You can get the air conditioning on, so this car is relatively it's comfortable in here. I mean, I got good seating room, good knee room, which is so rare for supercars because of this center seating position. All right, let's get it out and see what it can do. Oh gosh. Oh yeah. Oh, wow. The speed is unreal, instantaneous. Absolutely amazing. The handling is just fantastic. The car is tremendously quick to respond. Oh, oh, it's so fast. It's so fast. I have to say also, it feels less aggressive than the P1, not slower than the P1, but the P1 felt more like angry hypercar, like beats you up kind of. It's really an insane vehicle. This is actually like, if you want to drive it docile, you can, and also it's relatively linear in the way it delivers power and the way it seems to drive, and so it just kind of goes and goes, but you can also just kind of cruise a little bit. It's interesting, it doesn't feel as hard-edged maybe. It's not like a GT3 RS, this car. It's surprisingly graceful, I would say. This is so cool. This car is so cool. It does surprise me. It can cruise. I get into so many of the hypercars. I'm surprised by this, not because the supercars are the 488s, F8s, Huracans. Those cars are pretty drivable. You know, you can drive those every day if you want. But the hypercars are usually pretty compromised. They're not cars you want to be in that often. They're tight inside. They're not easy to drive. This car isn't. It's not tight inside. It is easy to drive. It's surprisingly fun and drivable. It has a great sound to it though, that induction sound, the turbo. Oh, it is powerful, but it is graceful in the way it delivers power. It is not brutal. This is probably the best driving hypercar I've ever driven. Not only does it handle incredibly well, just like they all do, not only is it incredibly fast, but it's like roomy and nice and relatively practical. You can get 3 people in here. What a cool car. What a well done marvel of a vehicle, seriously. It's so crazy you can't see behind you. I'm just like terrified. Can't see a thing. I don't know what's happening behind me. There's literally nothing that I dislike about this car except for the lack of a rear view mirror. The steering is fantastic. The acceleration is fantastic. The handling, the car is so good. Very planted, very, very stable, and of course immediate steering. Now I will say, having driven some Koenigsegg's, the steering on those is more immediate. Even the Pagani Zonda that I drove felt more like a Miata. This definitely has a lighter steering feel to it and sort of a more like important car steering feel, like you're not tossing it around or whatever, which I don't love quite as much, but it's still excellent. Overall, I would say just really cool. The center seat thing is amazing. All the technology is unreal in this car. Between the camera mirrors, the screens around you, just simply the engineering to get 3 seats in here, the electrochromatic sun visor and windows. This is a really cool car, but then also it's a really amazing car to drive. And also it's a really rare and special car. I've been talking about how McLaren makes too many cars. There's too many special cars, there's too many special McLarens. But if I was to get rid of all but one special McLaren, at least on sale right now, this is the one I would keep. This is a really, really, really cool car. I'm smitten. I absolutely love this car. Really, truly. And so that's the McLaren Speedtail. I love this car. I love how quirky it is. I love how fast it is. And I love how it pushes the envelope in so many ways compared to other more normal hypercars. Between the seating position and the styling and the technology, it is all just so cool. This really is my very favorite hypercar, and I'm gonna be sad to say goodbye to the Speedtail after today. But now it's time to give the Speedtail a Doug score. Starting with the weekend categories and styling, I personally love how the Speedtail looks, but it's been controversial, especially that cover over the front wheel. It gets an 8 out of 10. Acceleration, tremendously fast, and it gets a 10 out of 10. Handling is incredible, fantastically balanced and poised, quite impressive for a car like this, and it gets a 10 out of 10. Fun factor is obviously massive, given the performance level here, and it gets a 10 out of 10. And of course, cool factor, same deal. This car is a showstopper, and it gets a 10 out of 10 for a total weekend score of 48 out of 50. Next up are the
daily categories and features, and I have to say, the Speedtail is really impressive. It has some truly innovative stuff that no other car has, like electrochromatic glass instead of sun visors, and a wing that curls up the body of the car, and a wireless charging pad. It gets a 7 out of 10. Comfort is better than most hypercars, still not on Bugatti level, but much more tolerable than the Senna, and it gets a 4 out of 10. Quality is high. The car seems very well constructed with nice materials, and it gets a 7 out of 10. Practicality is better than most hypercars thanks to an extra seat, although it's not like this is especially practical, just a little better, and it gets a 2 out of 10. Finally, value, and this is tremendously expensive, but also so rare and special it'll never lose, and it gets a 6 out of 10 for a total daily score of 26 out of 50. Add it up, and the Doug score is 74 out of 100, which places it here against relevant cars. This is big, folks. The Speedtail has tied the McLaren F1 as the all-time Doug score champion, the highest I've ever given out. The Speedtail beats Bugatti, Koenigsegg, Ferrari, other McLarens, everything. This is the coolest hypercar on sale today, period, and it's one of my favorite exotic cars of all time. It's innovative, it's cool, it's insanely rare, it's everything a hypercar should be, and I'm proud to have the Speedtail at the very top of the Doug score.